When your RRSP converts to a RRIF, the government starts requiring you to withdraw a minimum amount every year, whether you need the income or not. That withdrawal is taxable. It happens automatically and it doesn't pause for anything. Not a bad market, not your other income, nothing. And that's why most people hear that and think, well, that's it then. Nothing to plan for. The government's got the wheel. And that's not really the whole truth. Yes, that mandatory piece is locked in, sure, but everything around it isn't, meaning how you take it, who you've named on the account, and what you do with it before and after that number gets calculated. And that's exactly the problem. Most Canadians spend all their attention on the one part they can't control and never even look at the parts they can. So in this video, I want to walk you through 5 specific hacks tied to your RRIF. I'm Carlo Cansino, Senior Financial Advisor with the McClellan Financial Group. We help Canadians transition from their working years into retirement. Let's get into them. Hack number 1. Convert a slice of your RRSP at age 65. Not the whole thing and not at age 71. Just enough to open the account early. Most people assume the RRIF conversion option only exists once you hit age 71. That the RRSP just sits there until the government forces the issue. But the hack is realizing it doesn't have to work that way. You can convert a small piece of your RRSP into a RRIF the year you turn 65. $10,000, $15,000, whatever makes sense for you. Not the whole account, just enough to open it. And here's what that does. It unlocks the $2,000 federal pension income tax credit, real money back, every single year, which from you will get roughly $300 in tax savings from that credit alone. Doesn't matter if you're married or single, this one works for everybody. However, if you do have a spouse, there's a second layer to this hack, because that income becomes eligible for splitting later. Because once that RRIF income exists, up to half of it can be split onto your spouse's tax return. If your spouse sits in a lower tax bracket than you, that split means real tax savings every year for as long as the income keeps flowing. Now, we're not talking thousands off a $15,000 conversion, but the credit, plus the splitting room it opens, it adds up over time. Wait until 71 to do any of this, as most people do, and you've missed 6 years of that pension credit. 6 years at roughly $300 each, that's close to $2,000 left on the table before splitting even enters the picture. That's the part that actually costs people money. Once that account exists, a new decision shows up every single year. Not about opening it, about what happens the day your minimum comes due. Which takes us to hack number 2. When your RRIF minimum comes due, move the units themselves instead of forcing a cash sale. When your RRIF minimum comes due, most people just call it in. Whoever's holding the account, your bank, your brokerage, wherever you've got this set up, they'll sell whatever's sitting there and send you the cash. And that's usually the end of it. That's not them trying to pull something. It's just the default, the easiest path for them to process. But it's rarely the best path for you, and nobody there is going to stop and point out the alternative. There is one, though. You can transfer the actual investments in kind into a non-registered account instead of cashing out. And the tax hit is the same either way, so the CRA doesn't really care how you got there. The difference is you're not forced to sell at whatever the price the market happens to be sitting at that particular week. So, say your minimum comes due the same year the market's down. If you cash out, that loss is locked in for good. But if you move the units in kind, the investment just keeps going. You haven't actually lost anything. It's just sitting in a different account now. The hack number 3 is to name your spouse as successor annuitant, not just beneficiary. Now, from our experience, we've noticed most people get to the beneficiary section on their RRIF paperwork and just name their spouse without thinking twice about it. This is because it feels like the obvious, safe move, and honestly, it's not wrong. But there's a different box on that same form that ends up mattering a lot more than people realize. See, when you name your spouse as beneficiary, and when you pass away, the RRIF collapses. It deregisters completely as if the account no longer exists. When that happens, the entire balance can become taxable income in that final year, all at once, unless the transfer to your spouse happens to roll over cleanly, and that's not automatic. So, picture this. Your spouse is already living through the hardest year of their life, and now they're also staring down a tax bill that treats your entire RRIF like it got cashed out in one lump sum. Now compare that to naming your spouse as successor or annuitant instead. Same intention, same person inheriting the account, but the mechanics work completely differently. The RRIF doesn't collapse, it doesn't deregister, it just keeps going, under your spouse's name now instead of yours, with the same minimum withdrawal schedule carrying on as if nothing had happened. And the reason this gets missed so often isn't that it's complicated, it's just one box on one form sitting right next to the beneficiary option. Nobody ever stops to explain the difference between the two, so people just default to whichever one sounds more familiar. Hack 4. This is about using the very last RRSP contribution room you'll ever get, which happens the same year you turn 71, right up against the December 31st deadline. Most people assume that once they hit 71, the RRSP door just closes for good, locked. No more contributions, end of story. But if you've still got leftover contribution room sitting there unused, you actually get one final shot at it in the year you turn 71, and you've got right up until December 31st of that year to use it. After that date, though, the door really does shut, permanently. No exceptions. These matter most if you're still earning income that year, because it means you get to claim the deduction one last time before the account converts and disappears into RRIF territory for good. Hack number 5. This is about naming the charity directly on the RRIF itself instead of leaving it to your will. Now, this last one is usually routed the same way for almost everybody through the will, sorted out later once the estate finally settles. But there's a version that works better specifically for a RRIF, and it comes down to naming the charity directly as beneficiary on the account instead of routing it through the estate at all. Because when the charity is named directly on the RRIF, that money skips probate entirely, so it moves faster and avoids the legal fees that come with the estate process. And on top of that, it generates a donation tax credit that offsets the RRIF's final tax bill in the year you pass away, rather than years later once the estate has finally wrapped up and everything's been sorted through the courts. At the end of the day, it's the same generosity either way, and the charity ends up with the same gift, but the mechanism behind it is completely different. And that difference shows up as a real dollar amount on that last tax return, money that either goes to the CRA or gets redirected toward the cause you actually cared about. So, there you have it. The 5 hacks that are easy to miss, but not easy to ignore once you know they're there. The kind of thing that you would be able to catch when someone actually sits down and goes through the account with you, line by line. We follow a proven process with our advisory team. So if your RRSP is set to convert in the next year or two, and you haven't looked at these 5 areas yet, that's exactly what we walk through with every single client. Click the link below if that's something you need help with to request a complimentary portfolio analysis with your actual numbers. Thanks for watching. We appreciate the support, and I'll see you in the next Ask Team FG video.